Okay, we're live. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. We'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting for Thursday, June 11th. First item on the agenda this evening, and for those following at home, the agenda was updated before this meeting online, and there are now 13 items from the original 12, just for anybody that's following. But the first action item is approval of the minutes from the May 14th meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from the May 14th, 2020 Finance Committee meeting.
Chris, you were not at that meeting, I believe?
Yeah, I was not at the meeting, so I have to abstain.
That was a month ago, so I'll second the motion. Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? And one abstention, Chris?
Yep.
And obviously no no's then. Item 2, the discussion of auditing standard 114, the auditor's communication with those charged with governance, auditors from Bloom Shapiro. Nicoletta.
Hi, good evening. Thank you. So I'm Nicoletta McTighe, partner with Bloom Shapiro. By now you should have received the memo titled SAS 114, Auditors Required Communication to Those Charged with Governance. Today I'd like to go over that memo in high level, not read the whole memo, and go over points that are highlighted in the memo, and then you can ask any questions either during my presentations or towards the end. So I'd like to go over the engagement scope. So we are engaged to audit the financial statements of the town. And during the audit of financial statements, we are going to consider the town's internal controls over financial reporting in order to determine our auditing procedures and for the purposes of expressing an opinion on financial statements, but not for expressing an opinion on the internal control. So the opinion will be just on the financial statements. In addition to the audit of the financial statements, we are going to perform a state single audit and a federal single audit. So the state single audit is done in accordance with the state compliance supplement, and the federal single audit is done in accordance with compliance supplement as shown in the uniform guidance. And in addition to these audits, we are going to perform an agreed upon procedures, which is required by the Connecticut State Department of Education. And during those procedures, we evaluate certain school grant data as printed in the Education Financial System, or as we normally call it, EFS, report in accordance with the procedures provided by the Connecticut State Department of Education. So that's the scope of the audit. Now, as I mentioned initially, we are going to audit financial statement and give an opinion on that. So financial statements are responsibility of the management. And in addition to preparing the financial statement, the management, so the finance office, is responsible to design, implement, and maintain internal controls over financial reporting. We as auditors are responsible, based on our audit work, to express an opinion on whether or not financial statements are free of material misstatements. To perform an audit, we need to be independent. So to date, there are no relationships between any of our representatives and the town that in our professional judgment impairs our independence. So in short, we are independent of the town and we can perform the audit. The audit is done in 2 different phases. So this week we started the preliminary field work, and we are doing the audit for the first time ever, completely virtual. And that entails a lot of communication back and forth, sharing of data via share file, which is a very secure way to get the data from the town. Read-only access to the financial system, read-only access to the tax system, and frequent meetings daily with the town. So we somehow figured a way to perform an audit virtually. And in addition to your town, we have performed several other audits that are done virtually for other towns in the state of Connecticut. Our final field work will be starting on September 8th. Depending on what the situation is there, it could be in person or still virtual, but we are hoping to be there and do the audit in person. Field work will end. So we are technically there for 2 weeks, but it's not going to end until sometime in October, around October 18th. And that is dependent, some work needed to be performed at the Board of Education related to student data, which is not going to be available until after October 1st. Some actual information that comes later in the year, either from the town's actuaries or the state actuaries for the teachers' plans. And then the plan is the financial statements are going to be finalized and issued sometime on December 1st. So in between of issuing a draft, there is an approval process from the management discussion and analysis preparation, and any changes that need to be made. So there is a couple, 2 or 3 weeks of process of reviewing back and forth until everything is completed and issued. And if there is any management letter at the time, will be issued at the same time. So all the reports, financial statements, state and federal single audits are going to be issued at that time. Usually the EFS report for the agreed upon procedures, it's later in the year, but with, again, a deadline of December 31st every year. At the conclusion of the audit, in addition to the reports I just mentioned, there will be another letter addressed to you, those charged with governance, with certain items, and they usually it's like a 3 or 4 page report. And that letter will include items such as if there were any management judgments, sensitive accounting estimates, significant accounting policies, if there was any new GASB adopted, which is not going to be any in this year, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. If there were any significant audit adjustments done, they'll be presented to you. If there were any disagreements with the management, any management with any difficulty performing the audit, any irregularities or illegal acts, so all those will be presented there. That communication is going to be either positive or negative. So there were, even if there are none, we still are going to say there were none of these items noticed. Other items included in the final communication will be if there were any consultation by management with other auditors and the matters affecting independence of auditors, if any. And again, if there are any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, that will be reported to you at your end. In the letter, there is a paragraph towards the end of the letter that is titled Knowledge of Fraud. So basically, we are asking that if anybody has any concerns of any type, or those concerns being fraud concerns, to please contact us at any time. And for that reason, we have included the engagement team in that letter. So my contact will be there, the concurring partner information is there, and the manager contact information is there, which will be Michael Popham. So as I said, you can contact us at any time with any questions or concerns. Including the letter, towards the end of the letter, there are some pages regarding best practices. We have listed there 2 topics. One is fraud risk assessment, and the other one is cybersecurity threat assessment. So basically, we, and that's not just for you, but for all our municipal clients, we encourage them to perform a formal risk assessment or an informal risk assessment, a fraud risk assessment, as well as cybersecurity threat assessment. For the cybersecurity threat assessment, we recommend that's done yearly, and included with that should be employee cybersecurity awareness training through focus training. As far as industry updates, there are no new GASBs to be implemented in the current year, and there were a couple that were going to be implemented in the current year, but GASB, based on current situation with COVID-19, delayed implementation of GASBs by at least 12 to 18 months. So there are no new GASBs to be implemented, which is a big relief in a year where we are trying to do everything remotely. Included in those last couple pages are those industry updates and the new GASBs that will be implemented over the next 3 years. So in 2021, fiduciary activities is going to be the one that's going to affect the town, and the town already has done quite a few, has done some work on that area, and all the changes, basically they know what changes are going to be going to the financial reporting. Statement 87 leases in 2022 is going to be another one that is going to affect the town. And again, the management has started work inventorying the leases and all the agreements in order to be ready for that implementation. So basically, that's what I wanted to cover in today's presentation and what was included in the SAS 114 memo. Any questions?
Chris, Jeff? Jeff, go ahead.
One more, Jeff. Oh, he's on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thanks for sharing that with us. So understand that some work has started remotely. So is this just interim work that's being done, and then once we get to year end, you roll forward and do all the other work? Is that kind of the problem?
Correct. So we call this planning phase of the audit. So basically what we do during this time of the year, we update our understanding of internal controls and any changes that have been done in the internal controls, especially this year with all the remote working. So we make sure that we update our understanding in order to decide if we are going to do any changes to our audit approach or not. So we do some work in the tax department, assessor department. So we do not test any balances at this time of the year. We test some controls, especially controls as they are required by the state and federal single audits. We started some work on some major programs that we determined that we know definitely are going to be tested for the current year. So this is just an interim work, no testing of final balances. That kind of work is done in September. Okay. When the year is closed.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Chris?
Yeah, the cybersecurity items that you mentioned, is that being done in parallel, establishing that baseline and some of the other recommendations? Is that done in parallel with our existing IT efforts? Because I believe it's phrased as there's offering a range of services. So I'm not sure if that's something that is included as part of the baseline package or as a potential replacement for what we're doing in-house. Could you talk about a little bit more about
yeah, so that recommendation there is just a recommendation as best practices to basically remind towns year over year that that's a threat that's there every year, and it's an ever-changing threat, but it's there. So it is not cybersecurity threat assessment is not part of what we do for the audit per se, but we look at the internal controls as far as the IT goes, and we do that every 4 to 5 years, or if there are any changes in the systems. But this is more of a recommendation of what you, as those charged with governance, should make sure that your IT department does, and so make sure that the assessment that could be done in an internal assessment, and if the capabilities are not done internally, we have an consulting department that's completely separate from the auditing that can provide those additional services. But we like to make everybody aware that, you know, it's a threat that's out there. It's not going to go away, and it's even worse now with remote working, and to make sure that the employees are aware and they are trained properly for that threat. So
we've had a pretty
Yeah.
a pretty robust discussion about cybersecurity over the last few weeks and months. So it sounds like perhaps that program was just making sure that we have those types of policies in place.
Yeah, so as long as an assessment is done frequently, then you are in good place.
And then there are a few different, it calls out the audit areas of focus, which I think is probably standard to what we've been looking at the last couple of years. Anything in terms of anything different this year and how you're evaluating things between COVID-19 and the what's likely to be a multi-year recession that would maybe stand out differently in this report from the past one? Or is there just not enough information yet how towns are impacted?
Yeah, so as of June 30th, there's not enough, it's not going to be a big impact. The biggest impact is going to be in the next fiscal year, 2021, because as of now, based on what I know so far, the collection rates are still high. The government was able to collect the money. So the financial impact is going to be mostly in 2021. And obviously, every time there is an economic downturn, the risk for fraud is increasing. You know, the opportunities there when things are being done remotely, not as much control. The controls kind of changed slightly. So I could see 2021 being a more challenging year to audit as opposed to records for 2020 because the effect is not there yet from what we've seen so far and from discussions we have. But again, the controls are an area that we are going to focus to make sure. And the first discussions that we actually had with management was there any change in the controls as a result of COVID? And we've gone through extensive discussions on those topics with management.
Thank you.
Nicoletta, just one basic question for you on it. Looking at the audit timing, familiar with the whole audit process. So understanding you're doing the preliminary now, but if you have to do the entire audit remotely, would that change any of the timing if for whatever reason you're not able to get into the facility?
The timing will not change. We would prefer to not change it, but and from what I know so far, Mona and John have been able to go there and provide us information. So I don't see that being an issue. It might slow it down a little bit, might not be as efficient as we would like to, but we have the capabilities to do the entire audit, almost the entire audit virtually. Somebody might need to come there for maybe to pick up something or look up something that was not able to be provided to us electronically, but we should be able to do that entirely virtually.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess just to pick up on that, is there any inventory type work you guys have to do?
We do not.
Or no. Okay, so
We do not.
that'd be the big thing you have to physically.
Yeah, the only inventory that exists in the financial statements of Town Rocky Hill is commodities for the school cafeteria, but that's such an immaterial amount that it never gets inventoried. It's roughly around $30,000 or something like that. And there's always question that there are requirements for us to review and audit certain things, but it's never the requirement is not that you have to touch something in order to audit it. As long as you are satisfied with the evidence that you get for the audit, you could do the audit remotely.
Excellent. Any other questions? No. Nicoletta, thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the item that was added, the update on the Pura grant, upgrade town council chambers AV and broadcast IT department. John, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. So the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority administers the Public Educational and Government Programming and Educational Technology Investment Account, which I'm going to shorten to PEG for the sake of simplicity. They fund that out of taxes that are levied against some of the utilities. Every once in a while, every few years, they make a grant available to municipalities, education departments, and government and public access channels for various upgrades. This round was upgrades for specifically for upgrading to HD capabilities on a lot of the public access channels, and we were able to take advantage of that. We were awarded $101,834 for upgrades to our council chambers, the media room, the back end programming, the HD capabilities, and a few other things that will allow us to integrate meetings like this in the Zoom format into our into our regular workflow as far as all the meetings go moving forward. You know, some of the things that that we're getting specifically, we're going to be able to produce high definition content, 5 new ceiling mounted cameras for HD, upgrades to our production switcher so that we could remotely operate the equipment if necessary, upgrades to the signal chain, which will allow us to distribute the town meetings in HD to not only our website, but also the YouTube platform. And if the cable companies ever allow it, also the cable, the live cable stream as well. You know, there's also going to be upgrades to the front of the council chambers. There's going to be monitors located at every other chair on the front table there, which will allow you to see the presentations more clearly and also in HD. And that's the basic gist of it. They expect work to start mid-July, tentatively at this point, and should take a couple of weeks to get it finished up.
So we think the chamber will probably be tied up for July, and hopefully, depending on how the executive orders go, we do start in August, start using the chambers again for meetings, if things go according to John's timetable.
Just along those lines, John, the construction going on, would that interfere with us holding meetings in the chamber, or most likely not?
Most likely not, because as long as the meetings are at night.
Okay.
Daytime meetings could be a problem, as you see the fencing that they finish up probably tomorrow, how much parking they've taken away from the town. But evening meetings should be fine.
Any other questions, Chris?
Yeah, you mentioned the monitors that'll be there at the front of the chambers. Will anything change for the screen that drops down for the when we have an event that has members of the public?
Unfortunately for the members of the public, no, that will still need to be in place. We looked at that several different ways and really tried to integrate that into the into this bid package. Unfortunately, what happened is we ran into limitations on the actual layout of the room, the height of the ceiling, fire codes, things like that. Ideally, we would have put up screens and eliminated those cameras, those drop downs entirely. We just were not able to logistically do it properly. The one improvement that we did make there, though, and I didn't mention, is there is a change to the podium as well. So that presenter who has had a line of sight issue, making presentations, there'll be controls right at the podium for them to do their presentations and be able to see it to more effectively kind of take care of that for allowing the council can see what's happening and look at the presenter directly, and he'll still be able to be seen by the public as well. And
then who helped? What was the effort like to get the grant, and how competitive it was? Does someone need some virtual kudos, or who do we give the kudos to?
You give the kudos to John Murphy. He's really the one who put in a lot of the legwork on this, and we became aware of the grant. We worked with a partner that HB Communications that has done work in the room previously. But John really put in the legwork in kind of specifying what equipment should be there, shouldn't be there with HB. And also is kind of coordinating with them right now. So he's the one who gets all the kudos on this.
$101,000, especially now, is definitely not something to sneeze at. So we certainly appreciate everybody's efforts. And I apologize for anybody who has to see how tired I look in HD.
John, just a couple quick questions. So the grant that you mentioned, will that cover 100% of the cost of the implementation?
Yes, it does. And that was one of the nice things about this grant. There was no matching funds required by the town.
Okay, great.
Actually, they already wired the funds up front.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, very good. Good grant.
Okay. And is it third parties that do the installation, or does any of your staff do it, or?
It's going to be mostly third party. There is some electrical work that's going to need to be done up at the front of the council chambers for the additional monitors. HB Communications does not have a licensed electrician, so our in-house electricians are going to be taking care of that.
Okay, great. And do you foresee any complications with construction beginning on the senior community center project along with this? Any people getting each other's way, or is any work going to have to get redone because whatever we're doing now, then it's going to get redone because of some other things being worked on, or is it completely independent and none will affect the other?
I don't anticipate any problems with construction. It's going to be only a few people coming in from the HB side to do the work. They're going to be completely out of the construction zone in the community center, or I'm sorry, not the community center, but in the council chambers. And whenever they're done, there's really going to be no kind of interaction with that whatsoever. Completely independent of each other.
Gotcha. Yeah, great.
John, just one question for me. You mentioned as part of the grant, the package you put together, everybody's John on this call, so you and John put together. There was a functionality to interact with Zoom or digital meetings like this. And, at this point, we're using them because we have to. Down the road, we may still end up using these for maybe some subcommittees and hopefully not the council meetings, but can you just talk a little bit about what that upgrade is going to do and what it's going to allow? And
actually, if John Murphy doesn't mind, I'd like to tag him in and he can kind of explain that a lot better than I could.
Sure.
Oh, it's muted.
Thanks, John. Yeah, Alan, so the idea was the grant was applied for before all this happened, but Pura allowed applicants to make some changes to react to this environment, as long as our dollar amount didn't change. So one thing that I looked into, of course, we're doing Zoom meetings now this way, but once we're back in the council chambers, how could we let you see someone, if you're sitting at the council front desk, let you see some people that wanted to Zoom into the live meeting, or vice versa. If someone was at home and you wanted them to Zoom into the meeting for quorum or whatever the case may be, how could they see everyone sitting at the podium? So it was just a matter of a little bit of extra hardware to be sure that anything that's filmed from the ceiling cameras in the room can go out to Zoom to that person who's at home. So really, it was only a small adjustment of about $1,200 piece of equipment, and we pulled some money out of something else. But just we foresee that this might be something we'll be doing in the future.
Unfortunately, something like a pandemic pushes us to use technology differently. But there's always been that talk of, I can't make a meeting because I'm traveling, but I'm in a hotel room somewhere. Now I can dial into the meeting, and vice versa. People that want to participate and can't make it to the town council chambers and still can participate. So thank you for the vision to think about, what this could do going forward and how we could utilize it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And we've also already used Zoom live in the council chambers for staff training sessions. So we see that where the trainee, the trainer person doesn't want to come into town hall,
Mhm.
and we can just use Zoom to facilitate trainings. So we're just trying to be forward thinking.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on the Pura grant? No? Okay. Update on bands. Mona, is that going to be you,
Oh.
John?
John's
So
turn.
you have a sheet in your packet listing the calendar associated with the band sale that we're planning in July. So we're looking to go out for $11,350,000. We've already worked on the OS and sent that back to our financial advisor, Hilltop. And we'll be working on that draft with the goal is to have a band sale on July 14th and hopefully close and get the funds in on July 29th. Now, these bands are for rolling over some money associated with the high school project, as well as funds for the construction phase of the community senior center, and then the start of the new road referendum from 2019 for the summer and fall road construction to come up with the 11,350,000. So as I say, we're waiting for the draft of the OS to be returned to for us to do a review. But that's the funding schedule coming up in the next 2 months.
Okay. Any questions? Chris?
I just had a question in looking over the amounts. So we're going for the majority, if not all, I guess, of the community senior center project. It looks like there's 7.1. There's a little bit of an overage. So could you talk about, I guess, going for that chunk of money largely as part of this sale versus, with a couple different smaller amounts? Is it because our construction phase is smaller with this project, or what was the thought there?
Well, we awarded the contract to PAC Group to be the general contractor of the project. And you can see it's starting up right now. So we're hoping to have a 12-month to 15-month construction period. So generally, we just did 12 months of bands to cover that to reduce our issuance costs associated with the project. So so again, it's a 12-month ban, and we'll review things at that time and see how the road referendum project's going, if we're going to, how much we're going to do in 2021. But the bulk of this is for this next 12 months of construction on the community center, senior center.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Jeff? No?
No.
I have none either. Where am I? Ground lease, 52 New Britain Avenue.
So about 20 years ago, whatever the cell phone company name was at the time, put up a cell phone tower at 52 New Britain Avenue next to Fire Station number 2. And as part of the revenue for that owner of the tower, because we leased the land to them, they own the tower. Other cell phone companies put up equipment on the tower to enhance the cell phone communication. Verizon requested to have some additional equipment out on the Fire Station number 2 near the tower. So we did up a 20-year ground lease with them, which will be expiring at the end of 2021. And I received an email, and I talked to a representative of Verizon saying that they're interested in renewing the lease when it expires, and was checking to see if the town was interested to continue with it. And he just sent an initial offering. It seems like Verizon is trying to reduce their costs, because when this first got started, we had a 20-year lease, and after every 5 years, our lease payment would go up 15%. So I think we're in our last couple of years. The second schedule shows what we're collecting on a monthly basis. It just seems like Verizon would like to keep the lease going here, but they would like to keep some of the rates a little not as generous as in the first round that we received. So they're starting off with a which would be looks like a $25,000 annual rental payment with a 10% escalation charge. Just talking with him, it sounds like Verizon will hold the line on the 10% increase. They want to keep that low, but there may be some negotiations to increase that annual starting point from 25 to maybe 26,000. And they want to extend it another 5 years. So instead of a 20-year lease, it'd be a 25-year lease. So again, they're just wanted to see if the town's interested in continuing doing this and working out an arrangement before the lease is up. If the town isn't interested, then they need that time to find a new location. So again, this is just a preliminary start for this, and so just bringing it to the attention. Eventually, if we go forward with it, then a new lease arrangement would be negotiated and approved by the town council.
And John, I'm going to make an assumption that are you running point between you, the town, and Verizon? Are you the point of contact at this point?
Right now, yes.
Okay. And the other question is, obviously they have some equipment on the site in the tower. Is that something that is also subject to property taxes?
Well, it's on the ground, but yes.
Okay. Other questions? I mean, didn't mean to jump on it, but
No, that's okay. Thanks, John. So in reading this, it looks like they want us to basically take close to a 10% haircut starting in 2022 from what we're getting, and then only have 10% increments. So for us to even, how many years is it going to take us to even get back to what we're earning at the end of the current lease? Probably like 2026 or something like that, or 27, or I'm guessing. Roughly, rough numbers, I mean.
Well, yeah, they use term 7. Yeah, probably sometime in the later 20s, the mid 20s, 26 or so.
I mean, do you have any feel for like what the market is? I mean, asking for a 10% reduction on land, which, land generally doesn't go down in price. I'm just curious.
Well, no, I just tend to think that, I think when we built the tower, there was a big rush by all the cell phone companies because there was more competition out there to get their equipment on the tower for better communication. But by doing this over a year in advance, I think they're looking at holding their costs, and if they don't see it here, favorable cost for them, they're willing to look elsewhere to try to get on someone else's tower. And that would be new revenue for the owner of that tower as well. So I think it's we're more of a victim of consolidation in the cell phone industry. And so I think they may have a little more leverage on the town than we had more leverage in the initial building of the tower and putting equipment on it.
Right. I mean, and I don't know the answer to this question, but in the move to 5G, I somehow got the impression that 5G doesn't have as long as of a distance of range. So while there may be less competitors, there may be more towers needed. I have no idea if that's true or not, but I don't know if that's something we can get a better understanding of. But
Well, I think it was easier to get towers approved through the regulatory process back in the 2000 period. But I think now you're seeing more resistance from where the tower is being built, the surrounding businesses or residential areas fighting it a little harder, because I think these towers went up pretty quickly in Rocky Hill, the police station one, as well as the one at the fire station.
And John, do you know if, the tower and all the equipment on it is theirs? Is that's correct? We leased them the land?
No, they have some pieces of equipment on the tower, but they're not the owner of it, and so on. And whatever equipment they have on the tower, it needs to be supported by whatever equipment they have on the ground to, I would assume, improve connections and
So do we have other telecom companies using that tower as well, or is Verizon our only revenue source for that tower?
well, we have a couple revenue. We have other cell phone companies on that, as well as the company that owns it. I'm not sure what the name is. They've changed so quickly over the years.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what our terms look like for them, and if they're coming up too. I mean, we don't want to.
See, anything on the tower, the owner of the tower gets those payments. And then we just get anything anybody that has additional equipment that they want to put on the ground or on the side of the building.
So, so then Verizon is are they the only ones who are giving us a payment like this based on that ground equipment?
I know we have these arrangements. I don't know if we have, how many we might have at the fire station. I know we have some at the police station. You know, Mona?
Yeah, we've got Nextel and Sprint and Castle. So we've got 3 other arrangements from the police area, the police station.
Yeah,
They're about 2,000 a month.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. You know, I don't think we want to chase these guys out of town, but if we want to understand what the timing of these other contracts look like, because we don't want to suddenly have everybody come and give us, you know, I want to pay you less, have less of a kicker between the terms, and then extend my deal. That hopefully something we can avoid with the other folks, similar arrangements. And do you know, I guess one other thing related to this item, there's been some movement in the area of municipal Wi-Fi. Does this potentially offer us any, I guess it would probably be the owner of the tower. Like if we were to put our own equipment up there or something like that in the future. I mean, 25 years is a long time, who knows? It's the chance to, you know, if there's a chance to insert something as an offset for the spending less money, that also potentially opens up the town's use of the tower or the ground equipment. Maybe that's something to explore as well. I'm not sure.
I think from where I sit, I look at it as a revenue source. It's pretty steady. There are companies that we receive their check the first of the month every year, and it's a good couple $100,000 of just use of town property, putting town property to good use. So very happy with this as a revenue source. As far as what happens down the road, your guess is as good as mine on that.
Yeah, I just think, you know, they're asking us for a deal. It's a negotiation. Give something, you get something. So it's not, you know, maybe there's something else that we can think of that isn't, you know, if we do wind up accepting close to their proposed terms, maybe there's a way to get creative so the town gets something.
Well, I would just say if they would match whatever we're getting the current year, we'll extend that for another 5 years. And that way we get it up higher than 25,000. So if they stay at the 27,376 for the next 5 years, and then we may just have to give the 10% increase because that's just talking to the guy, that's the feeling that I got, that they wouldn't budge on that. Maybe that sounds like a good deal for both sides to me. And again, I can say that we just discussed this, and you sort of set the rent at, willing to stay at the same that we're making currently for the next 5 years, but we'll agree to the 10% increase if you're interested.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good outcome because, and then 5 years down the road, at least we're getting 10% on increase on 27.3, not on 25,000.
Yeah.
So it'll help us,
And
exponentially.
then we'll pick up an extra 5 at the back end.
Yeah.
So-
I think that makes sense.
John, the only question, by any chance, is our town cell phone service with Verizon?
It bounces around. I knew we were with Verizon for a while, but then I think we switched over to somebody else when the police department required it. But I know we have been a customer of Verizon for quite a while.
And maybe just as part of the discussion, we can negotiate a favorable rate on our town cell service, which really has minimal cost to them as additional services, because we're giving, and then give the 10% rate increase. Just a negotiation option.
Well, sometimes we get our rates tied off of state rates, and again, you're dealing with something the size of Verizon. People we may be dealing with may work out in Nebraska, and the rate people may be down in Florida.
Absolutely. All right, so you'll just keep us posted on, I guess, on that item.
So I was just bringing this to the attention. I think it's something that the town should hold on to, and throw something back at them and see what they say.
Okay, excellent.
We got quite a bit of time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and no other questions, we can move forward. COVID-19 expenditures.
Okay, that will be my update.
All right, go ahead, Mona.
Okay. So I used the same format that we tried last month to give you an idea dollar-wise where we are spending. Just to give you a feeling, at this point between the town and the ambulance, we're at almost 58,000 with PPE and overtime. And I'd say at the time of creating this update, obviously the numbers tend to continue to increase. That was based on actuals, and the invoices continue. Departments are still purchasing their masks and their gloves and the cleaning supplies. We've had an addition in building the dividers and the shields throughout the department, so we can get prepared for when we do open up for public. So at this point, we've set up a budget to FEMA for 100,000. Actually, it's 101, and 80,000 of that is for materials, and 20,000 is for overtime. If you notice at this report, there's only 4,000 in overtime. We spend a lot of meetings and reviews with OPM and with FEMA, going over what's eligible and non-eligible, and they've acknowledged that some of the training that's been involved with the COVID would be eligible, and that's brought in a large dollar amount through the police department. So actually, when you get into your expenditure reports, and some of the overtime is a little bit on the higher side, you'll see we'll be taking some of that out and moving it into the COVID grant. So there's going to be about 10,000 coming out of the overtime. So we had our dispatch did a lot of training on N95s and fit testing and so forth, and all that will become eligible and not be a general fund expense. So you can see that with the items being purchased, perhaps if we had the other month in comparison, we're still probably increased about 8,000 masks and shields since the previous month, and another over 6,000 in gloves, and we're still continuing to spend the funds on sanitizing. the premises, town and ambulance areas. That's our highlights.
Okay. Questions?
Mona, I don't know if you know the answer, but are the departments starting to feel an easier time of getting the PPE as they're ordering it, or is it still hard to come by? Or
Well, I think we've had at least, actually, John looks like he wants to. We've had some contacts with some of the vendors that are making it easier, but I think there still is a delay. So we've had even ourselves that we're finding that if you have an opportunity for a vendor that has something available, we're finding we should probably put the orders in now because there tends to be the delay. And John, have you heard anything that you want?
Well, I think the general mass and the Purell is starting to show up on a timely basis and so on. I think a lot of the troubles are those more sophisticated masks, those N95s.
Right.
I think they're having trouble getting those. But other than that, I think it's loosening up and things are flowing. The delay isn't as long as it used to be. Again, we got an order in, through our Staples contact. What do we get? 5,000 of these masks in?
Yeah, the disposables.
Last week, and then we got some of the face guards from Merit Printing. They started doing those face shields
The shields.
and so on. So as I say, people are seeing there's a market for stuff and they're gearing up their product line to meet that need.
John or Mona, I'm not sure who to address it to. One of the things I've read, the state of Connecticut, through the governor's office, has made $75 million available to towns and municipalities. And I haven't had a chance to read the full detail. I'm still trying to keep up on the ever-moving PPP target that changes every 2 days.
Yeah.
Is this going to be part of that reimbursement, or is
It
that
will.
separate?
This could go on longer than Nicoletta's presentation.
I'm going to keep it short, John. I've had so many hours of this. I'm an expert, right?
I'm with you on the PPP side, so I know what you're saying.
But yes, this will be, as I'm showing this to you, I'm going to show you the 100% cost, and it's going to go to FEMA as the 100%. They will most likely reimburse us for the 75%, and in some cases decide that some things that were presented were not eligible. So the remaining 25 that's not covered, or any of the ineligible type items, will then be presented to the state, and that'll be part of the 75 million.
Okay.
So that will become the surplus that FEMA didn't cover. How's that work?
That 75 million is sort of split between 45 million now, and they still have 30 million for maybe post July 1st types of expenses for next budget year.
Okay.
Right.
And
Give us another quarter.
And then OPM, I think at the end of April, requested all towns to submit their costs associated with the virus, and you had maybe 2 days to figure it out, Mona, and get something back to them. And they took all of the towns' reports that they sent in at the end of April and totaled them up, and that's how they got to the 45 million. And again, as Mona says, before you get to the state money, you got to exhaust any other available resources, which is primarily FEMA for right now.
I guess the positive is we have sources to make sure we're getting reimbursed.
Right. Yes. In fact, they're saying that is the goal of the OPM, is that they find that every dollar is reimbursed. That's their goal. We shall see.
Okay. Chris, any questions on this one? No, good. All right. Reserve of capital, non-recurring expenditure funds.
Yeah, but the only thing new there is, as Mona mentioned during John's presentation, is we did get the money from the state through Pura. And it's put in here as $101,000, right, the last item before town total. And as I said, this is a nice grant. We got the money before we had to spend it. So that's really about the only activity in non-reoccurring for right now. The High school steps are starting to get active, so we'll have some bills for that in June. They started knocking them down. They got the contractor out there with his fencing up and so on, and they may be able to start pouring. I don't know if tomorrow, but sometime next week. And so that should be ahead of schedule because the school was closed by the governor for the rest of the school year.
Okay. Any questions there? Keep moving. What do we got? State aid to municipalities.
Okay, I'll take that one. You'll probably notice that I had jotted a little note at the end, at the bottom of that sheet that said no change. But I'll steal my thunder of next month and let you know that we did get our municipal grants and aid state money, the 221,000 that's expected for June, and that did come in. We are still waiting for our Pequot money, which usually comes at the end of June. And so we'll still be looking for that. But as for this particular month of reporting, there was no change, no receipts.
Any questions there, guys? Mona, I just had one question there. I noticed that we have a shortfall. I gotta put the glasses back on. 44,000 on the ECS and 37,000 on the municipal stabilization grants over the budget.
Right. You'll find that on the ECS because that's for the most part is formula driven.
Right.
And what happens with that is it tends to be any adjustment they do on their excess cost grant comes up against the ECS. So we always have that tendency that we know what our amount will be as we're budgeting, but then if there's an adjustment that occurs for the excess cost, it will impact that. So you'll see, you know, we've had that tendency to have small adjustments against what's been adopted.
Okay,
It's
so
kind
those
of
won't be made
a
up.
historic adjustment that may occur.
So those, yeah, those won't be made up at any point. That means we'll just have a slight budget shortfall in those two lines.
That's right. Yes, those numbers will stay, and the same with the other municipal share. That is the amount we'll receive, and that will not change. There's no additional coming forward.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any other question? Then we'll move forward. The monthly financial report.
Okay, that would be me. And I did not realize, but the cover says March. And this really isn't March. I believe I am going to tell you all about the month of May.
All right.
First, we will discuss the tax collector's report through May 31st. And you see we're doing extremely well with the current tax collection. We're at 99.6%. I'd say we based our adopted budget on 99.28, so that gives you a sense of where we are. This is a good place to go. We imagine the collections for the month of June should not be much, so I think we're 99.6 is about where we'll end up to close out the year, if any small amounts to be collected. Again, the motor vehicle supplementals is slightly lower than the previous, that 90.7. We might be sensing what's happening in the situations with the economy and the COVID situation. If people are just holding back on payments, that might be the first glimpse of that. And our prior year taxes, I've mentioned several times that that amount is going to be lower than budget and going to be something we'll have to deal with through the overall revenue collections.
Okay. We're good on revenue?
Questions on that? All right.
Yep.
Next page. So all revenues, aside from our 100% on the current tax collections and mentioning the 74 for other tax, I would say if we were looking at a base mark of 92% collections as a marketplace, we're doing obviously extremely well in interest. Obviously, that is making a turn for the lower as we close out the year, but we did very well so far. At this point, when you already mentioned the state grants that we had received what we were expecting in the municipal aid. For the most part, I think we are doing very well. The lease tower money, the 90,000 has not been received, and we're going to follow up and see if we can find out what's happening with that. That should be here by year end, the 90,000.
That's the solar energy, correct?
That would be the solar energy, right? Right. And we're noticing that the building permits, I'm jumping down toward the bottom at 86%. It's actually not far from where it has tended to be in the past. So, it's hopeful that we'll be collecting the additional to close out the year. But still, we're in a good place overall. That's your high level view. If there's any questions.
Just I guess the only question, the total variance before fund transfers and ordinance transfers is almost $600,000.
Right.
I know we have another month.
Yes.
Um,
Right. You've got about, again, we have the two large grants, well, they're slightly large grants, the 200,000 from the municipal sharing and another 70 from Pequot. So you'll have about 300,000 in state money alone, plus
Right.
any other miscellaneous revenues will come in, and of course the solar energy money as well. I think when we look at the expenditure side, we may find that even without the transfers, we should still be in a good place.
okay.
Also in the state money, it also includes LoCEP money, is reimbursement of expenditures
Mhm.
in the capital improvement side. So we're showing, I think, another 56,000 expenditures at surplus on the CIP. So it's sort of like a wash on the state side. So if we get the Pequot money in, we're pretty close to breaking even if you back out the LoCEP money
Right.
on the state revenues.
Shall we try expenditures?
Let's take a look at them.
Okay. So again, I'll look at the summary sheet. And again, if I'm using the it's 11 months, 92% as a guide at the percentage expended, I will just highlight, of course, finance is at 70%, but that's salaries that we're aware of. We have the registrar of voters. They didn't have a primary, so they just knew they were going to come in under budget. Small department, but the percentage stands out to us. We have the fire department is at 69%, but they have some encumbrances coming forward. I think they had mentioned some purchase orders that will be coming forward. We also have on the highway at 80%. There's 2 months still remaining according to this year-to-date expenditure. So this is through April. You'll still have 2 months of trash and recycling bills on there. So the percentage tends to look a little bit on the low side. We probably mentioned on going from the human services, that's the 01402, and probably traveling through the aquatics. Those tend to be like in the 80s. There's a few in there, and a lot of that's impacted by part-time salaries, because when we did do the COVID shutdown, there were some of the part-timers that we just didn't have return to work. So you see, if you looked in the detail, a lot of the part-time lines have savings in there. So those are actually reduced numbers that are associated with part-time. And I will probably jump to employee benefits. At 81%, we still have a pension payment to make, which will be on Monday. And we have an additional month of expenses for employee group insurance. And actually that went out just this week, just missed the timing of the financial report. I believe that should, now we should mention on the employee benefits that we had the teacher's retirement line item that we won't use. So you're going to have that savings, 170,000 as well.
So Mona, as the overall, just looking right down to the bottom, we're roughly 92% of of the year with 1 month to go. And we're at 84.8, so 5%.
Right.
Do we think that 5% will carry through to the end of the year? You know, assuming it averages out?
I would not say it's not at the 5%, but I have done a projection, and like I was saying, I think you'll find it definitely will come under budget, but we've got, of course, Board of Ed will come in at 100%. Go back and mention them. They're looking at 82%, and they're going to show, although they're going to have, money to return to the town, we'll show them as fully expended. It's going to be their expending plus whatever is going to be returned to us. So that's going to show a 100%. That'll drive that percentage upward. So there will be savings overall, but it would not be, I think, at the 5%. I think you'll come close to.
We should be in like the 97% range, I think.
I think so.
All right, so roughly a 3% under budget is what
I think so. Yeah.
and it's a ballpark. We won't know till it's final.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, I accept that as a, it's a ballpark.
Yeah.
Best guess.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris, Jeff, questions? No? Jeff, any?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Then let's move on to our legal bills.
Yeah, you have the schedule of legal bills through April. From what Stuart told me, the Coles mannequin case was Coles took it to the Supreme Court of Connecticut, and they rejected hearing the case and sent it back to the Superior Court. So we're waiting to hear what Coles is going to do next. But so we had a couple wins on our side, but I guess Coles can still appeal again or do something. So other than that, and it's primarily some small expenditure associated with some of these revaluation cases.
John, on the Coles case you just mentioned, are other towns also having the same dispute with them, or that where Coles are located, or?
I tend to think this case is the one that, depending on how it settles out, it will trickle down and affect other towns.
So we're going to create the precedent, and others are going to. Okay.
So we could be, we'll be in the law books.
And with that, we're kind of carrying the torch, I guess, for a lot of to solve a question that impacts a number of towns. Is CCM or anybody kind of helping out, or do we anticipate that we'll recover any of those fees if Coles does exhaust all their appeals, or are we on the hook for the never-ending mannequin dollars?
I'd say I don't think you'll see anybody coming helping us out on this. I think it's just a case that started as just a basis assessment appeal case, but Coles dug their heels in and just dragged it out, and so we were the lucky ones to fight it.
Thanks.
Anything else on legal fees? No? Okay. We're getting there. Item 11, update on the Board of Education and the roof project.
I talked to the superintendent yesterday, and he says that they're on target to return at least $100,000 to the town as of close of business June 30th of this month.
Fantastic.
And the status of the roof grant is they applied for it in June. So they had to make they made the application early in June. The deadline was the 10th of the month, which was yesterday. And they haven't heard anything from the state based on their application in June. And then once they get approval from that phase, then they can bring their plans to their design, a state design group, their approval to go out and solicit a contractor to replace the roof. So as of right now, it's with the state, and as of this morning, I haven't heard any pluses or yay or nay from the state.
And I'm not sure if my timing's right on it, but was that actually scheduled or planned to take place this summer?
I believe that was the idea. Now,
Okay,
I'm not sure whether they can get approval and get out there and get the contractor out there in August to get it done before school starts, whether they're thinking they can do something when school is, so it wouldn't interfere with them, but the intention was to get it done this summer.
that's what I thought. Okay, that's why I was asking that. All right, any questions on those updates? Other, John, anything, Mona?
Mona's been updating the budget book, other things with the auditors and listening to the FEMA and state OPM Zoom meetings. So we're hoping to send the budget book to the printer tomorrow and hopefully send a copy to the council sometime next week.
Okay. And I was just going to mention, I received a letter and it was addressed to myself as chair of the finance board. And I assume, well, I know it was also addressed to Elaine from RAM Financial Group, basically offering to buy some of our tax liens. And I just mentioned it so, you know,
Mhm.
we're aware we got it. And
Yep. Yeah, you got some fancy solicitation.
yes, but at least now we recognized we got it.
Yes.
You're on board, Alan.
All right. Not if anybody has any other items for other.
I just had a question, just following up on the budget book. When does it get posted online? Once it goes finalized?
Next week.
Yeah.
The rule of thumb is we give it to the council first
Mhm.
and then get posted the next day.
Okay.
So that you don't get blindsided.
Sure. Thanks.
All right. We'll get to our last and favorite item, item number 13, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Hi.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey, everybody.
Oh,
All right.
Alan, before you,
Yes, John.
you want a senior liaison meeting in 2
Yeah,
weeks?